If you want to dive deeper into space combat in Star Citizen, get the best settings and the best out of your ship, then you are right here. Because in this guide, we go into space combat in detail. And this guide is especially for beginners, players who coming back, or advanced players. Here we mainly focus on the PvE area. Star Citizen in the current version 4.2 offers us a lot of configuration and setting options. Because not only optically we can significantly change our target acquisition and the displays to enemy ships, but also in terms of gameplay we have some possibilities to improve our combat experience and above all to simplify it. We go step by step into all areas, explain the differences from coupled to decoupled mode, how you can use your weapons optimally and which different fire modes are available in the game. And don't worry, even for absolute beginners, we explain everything step by step and show you all keys. Basically, we can distinguish into two different flight modes, the coupled mode and the decoupled mode. In standard, you're in the coupled mode and can give thrust upwards or downwards with the spacebar or the control button, as well as with the side buttons A and D to the sides. In this case, your ship equals in coupled mode as soon as you are no longer give a thrust, the counter movement. That means, if you don't give thrust, you stand still in space. As the first setting, I recommend you to use the F button, hold it, and then go into the mouse mode to Advanced HUD. Here, switch on the additional flight informations. Here, you can then see also the activated coupled mode. This is especially suitable outside of a fight, as we can keep a stable flight position everywhere, even if we don't give a thrust. With this, we also stay within an atmosphere at the same point, and our ship gives a corresponding counter thrust. For a space battle, however, it is recommended to switch to the decoupled mode. To do this, we hold down the C button and see that the coupled symbol is removed. The special thing about the decoupled mode is that thrust inputs, especially in the weightlessness of space, are continuously carried on. That means, if we give a thrust in one direction, our ship flies in this direction until it receives a counter thrust. Also, this is very fuel saving and we can create unpredictable flight patterns. But first, let's take the break by holding down the X button and, if necessary, the Shift button for our boost. In decoupled mode, we can, if we give a thrust for example, fly in one direction and look in a completely different direction, because our flight path does not correspond to our viewing direction. If we now give thrust not only in one direction but in several different directions, we can, for example, drift down and to the side and at the same time build in a drift through a rolling movement. If we use these functions later in space combat, our flight path becomes very unpredictable, especially for NPC opponents, and we take less hits. For this, it is especially advisable to practice on some objects, such here in Arena Commander, and to test the different flight options in decoupled mode yourself without taking any risk. Your goal is to control your ship at any time. That means, even if you take an unpredictable flight path, not to hit objects or stations or asteroids here. But to view our flight path, there is a small symbol, and this is indispensable for this. Because right in the HUD we find a small aircraft symbol whereby, if this is not crossed out, we perform a forward movement, or if crossed out, a reverse movement. And this symbol changes depending on which direction we look. With this we can predict at any time where our ship is moving, which also allows us to master different tricks or flight passages. Especially in decoupled mode, we can influence our flight pattern in addition to additional thrust inputs, such as up, down or to the sides, so relatively precisely, even if we feel very unstable in space. So definitely try it out. And of course, you can find this little symbol in coupled mode also. In decoupled mode, however, control inputs are much finer and easier to perform, because our thrust inputs are not automatically balanced here. And with that, you have completed the foundation for a safe flight in space in decoupled mode, especially in weightlessness of space. In the atmosphere, it should be noted that gravity pulls us down here and we should have to give thrust inputs up regularly. In addition, Star Citizen currently offers two different basic flight modes, the SCM, so the Space Combat mode, and the NAV, the navigation mode. By holding down the B key, you can switch between these modes, whereby in Space Combat mode we have access to our shields and weapons, and in NAV mode, although we can fly much faster and at the same time we can jump to other remote points, we cannot use our shields or weapons here. But in a Space Combat, the NAV mode can get you out of a danger zone relatively quickly, because you are much faster here than your opponents. But at this point behind, that you should also make sure that you are not traveling too fast in Space Combat mode, because your weapons don't hit precisely with high speeds. You should also always have a look at your G-force display, because if the G-forces exceed, you will be in a blackout. Shortly before a blackout, however, it is advisable to give counter thrust in the opposite direction again, because you can prevent the blackout with this. But if the G-forces are too large, you will relatively quickly get into a blackout, which will last a few seconds and you will be unable to act here. In addition, there is the possibility to deactivate the G-safe mode, whereby you get into G-forces much faster, which can cause a blackout. And during a blackout, you just fly in the direction and, as I said, you are helpless. Next, the settings of your weapon energy is also clearly relevant, especially if you use energy weapons. For ballistic weapons, you do not need any additional energy here. For energy weapons, this setting has a direct influence on how many shots you can fire and how quickly they regenerate. So you should, especially if you are traveling with energy weapons, give as much energy as possible to your weapons. But of course, you should not neglect your shields or your engines either. Because shields recharge slower with less energy and hold fewer hits, and your engines have also significantly less power with less energy, and your boost also recharges much slower. Therefore a tip: use energy from other systems, such as currently from your coolers. You can reduce this to a large extent and use additional energy for your weapons, shields or engines. And of course, you have also the option to pull all these functions on different hotkeys, or additional to any joystick button. But let's get to the basics for Space Combat. If you see red recognized targets, which most enemies are, you can mark them with the T key or with the 5 and 4 key, which activate and switch on the next enemy. You should also quickly familiarize yourself with the countermeasures for rocket fire, which also are available with the H and J keys. Because if you get a missile warning, use your countermeasures with the H or J key and you don't get hit by a missile. But beware, with the corresponding countermeasures, your target detection can be distributed and you have to retarget. You also have the option to switch to rear missile mode yourself via the middle mouse button, where you can get shown on the top left how many rockets you have currently switched on, which can vary with the G key. If you hold your target long enough, within a minimum or maximum distance, you can simply fire to this locked target with the left mouse button with your missiles. To regain access to your normal ship weapons, you can also press the middle mouse button again. And in this combat, we are already in decoupled mode, so without active control support via your onboard computer. But you probably notice that your target detection is clearly different from the one you saw here. Therefore, we switch to the options under Key Bindings, Advanced, and go under Vehicle Weapons. Because here we can activate additional displays, such as the pip combination toggle, the pip precision alliance toggle, the pip fading toggle, and the gunnery UI magnification. And if we put these functions on individual keys or all on one key, we can switch these functions on and off, thereby obtaining much more information and a clearer area about your currently targeted target. This is a visual clear plus, so try it out. Because in this way, with two small lines on the sides, we can also see the flight direction and alignment for our opponent from a distance. As with larger pips, so larger round areas that we have to aim on, we get a much greater probability of hitting. Alternatively, you can also activate these settings manually via your MFD in the gunnery area in-game at your cockpit via the various settings options, via the individual pips, precision alliance or magnification toggles. Your choice. Then you have the same view and, for example, as in this case, you have two different pips for two different ship weapons, so the round symbols, which color green in range and when you have hit the target. If we press the fire button, our ship weapons will be held and we will hit the target. But there is another very recommendable setting, which gives us more options to hit our targets more easily. For this, we switch back to the options, this time under Game Settings. And here we look for the functions Pilot Weapons Manual Gimbal Mode Default Slaving. And change this to VJoy. Then we switch to the Manual Gimbal Mode, where you should also press a button here, and not only have a forward-facing crosshair, but you have the option to move it slightly further than from the middle. With this you have the option to steer the target much faster in the green pip area in Space Combat. Because for this, you do not have to move the entire ship first to the middle, but have a larger expanded playing area for your combat crosshair. With this, you can aim much easier and faster in the green area or keep your opponents always in sight. In addition, we strongly recommend that you activate all these settings that we have shown you here directly and first in the Arena Commander. And here to start an offline version of the Pirate Swarm. Because here, when you click the escape button, the game pauses and you can edit the settings and then continue directly and test all for yourself. Here you can also test the alternative target mode. In this, for standard left mouse button, here you get the zoom on the target and have a slightly slower shot sequence. But this improves your target possibilities at a distance, and you have also all displayed individual components of opponents. So a sniper mode, so to speak. And with this, you have the most important and most effective basic settings or basic knowledge about space combat in Star Citizen. And of course, there are countless more options and some settings that are especially relevant for specialization in the later game area. But we show you this in the follow-up guide. Until this, thanks for watching and see you in the verse.